at one point they cut the janitorial services in some of the offices, so there was no one to replace the toilet paper or empty the trash bins. So folks had to bring their own toilet paper from home.
It has been 2 years since Elon Musk completed his takeover of Twitter. The richest man in the world had become convinced that the social media site was to blame for the proliferation of what he called a woke mind virus, and he was determined to introduce drastic changes. That included changing its name to X, loosening the rules around content moderation, and insisting that users pay to get verified and receive a blue tick. The story of the acquisition and what led up to it and what Musk has done since has now been told in a new book, Character Limit: How Elon Musk Destroyed Twitter. The authors are New York Times technology reporters Kate Conger and Ryan Mack, and they both join me now. Kate and Ryan, hello.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Hello.
Thanks very much for being with me. Look, we'll come to the acquisition itself in a moment, but first, for people who might not be on X or Twitter or know much about it, what has he changed Twitter from and to? Kate, I'll start with you.
Sure. So Twitter has gone through a really radical transformation under Elon Musk. First, just in the employee base and who's working on the product. So he eliminated more than 3/4 of the staff and got rid of a lot of the people who were focused on policy, content moderation, ad sales, a big chunk of product and engineering. So there's just far fewer people working on the service and adding new things to it and keeping it sort of chugging along.
Okay.
So that's caused some degradation there. There's also the financial losses, obviously, and the name change itself. Twitter is no longer Twitter. Now it's X.
Ryan, Musk was obviously well-known, incredibly well-known man beforehand, mainly known for his futurism and his technology projects, best known probably for making really popular electric cars. Why did he buy Twitter in the first place?
It ended up being it was his favorite thing in the world. It was his favorite toy. If you look at his usage of the platform prior to the acquisition, he spent hours a day on it. And at that point, he was one of the world's richest people. His net worth now floats around $250 billion on any given day. And he looked around and said, in the way a billionaire might buy a sports car or a sports team or a yacht or even an island, I'm gonna buy this thing that I really like, I really enjoy, and I'm gonna run it. And he spent that $44 billion to do so.
And look, I mean, people will remember the sackings, the pictures of staff asleep on the floor. How miserable was it, Kate, during the takeover for people who worked there?
We were expecting the takeover to be very chaotic, and I think it exceeded even our expectations. There was just an enormous amount of turmoil going on inside the company at that time. And like you mentioned, Elon was requiring some people to sleep in the office. He turned some of the offices into little hotel suites so people could spend the night there. And I think it was a really, really grueling time for employees who were hoping perhaps that they could salvage little bits and pieces of the service and watching this thing that they really cared about being destroyed.
I said we had an anecdote in the book just to illustrate how bad things had gotten. And at one point, they cut the janitorial services in some of the offices, so there was no one to replace the toilet paper or empty the trash bins. So folks had to bring their own toilet paper from home. So yeah, it was not by any means a happy place for a bit.
Musk's character beforehand, sort of mercurial, slightly erratic, it was already quite well known. Remind us of the story about when a surrogate was about to have his second baby with the musician Grimes, and how she found out that the name she was hoping to give to the child had already been taken. Either one of you can field that one if you fancy.
Yeah, this is one of the stranger things we reported in the book, but he had a relationship with Grimes, the singer. They had a child named X, who he carries around these days, kind of as a prop. But they were having a second child via surrogate, and secretly, Elon had fathered twins with an employee of his, this woman named Siobhan Zillis, who did not talk or tell Grimes about. And so this set of twins came before Grimes's child, and Grimes and Elon had already talked about a name for their coming baby. They were going to name it Valkyrie. Well, Elon takes that name and uses it for one of the other children that he has with Siobhan Zillis, which then causes completely messy blow up with him and Grimes, and just kind of illustrated how messy he is as a
Mm-hmm.
person, and kind of how unempathetic he was. This kind of broke his relationship with Grimes. It was one of the things that broke his relationship, and you know, to do that, I think is I don't know, in some ways, not what a normal person would do.
I mean, the fact that his character was well known, yet despite that, Jack Dorsey, the old chief executive of Twitter and the founder of Twitter, he was initially very keen for Musk to buy Twitter. Would he now regard that as a mistake? Do you think, Kate?
I think Jack's opinion of this sort of flip flops by the day, he really believed in Elon and endorsed him as the purchaser of Twitter, encouraged him to do that deal. And then after the fact, started to criticize him and some of the decisions that Elon was making with the company. But even then, Jack has gone back and forth about how he feels about Elon and about the acquisition. He's gone from criticizing Elon to praising it to endorsing some of Elon's ideas and criticizing some others. He said that his criticism of Elon was sort of blown out of proportion. So I think what we found in our reporting on Jack is that he is kind of a chameleon in his beliefs, and his thoughts and feelings about things can shift on a daily basis. And so I think sometimes he regrets the acquisition and sometimes he still believes in Elon's capabilities as a leader.
I mean, his Twitter as well, Jack Dorsey's Twitter, was quite an unusual and erratically and strangely run place, but it was fundamentally seen, at any rate, as a liberal platform, worrying about hate speech and spreading disinformation and so on. Although Dorsey's politics are, of course, more complicated than that. Um, has the sort of the pivot to a free speech, sort of fundamentalist free speech mode on Twitter since Musk took over, Ryan, has that meant a complete lack of regulation on Twitter? Because that's how it can feel.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly gotten rid of a lot of content moderation. He's allowed certain accounts to come back to the platform that have been banned for violating rules in the past. I think of something like Alex Jones, for example, the head of InfoWars. In the US, we have a white nationalist named Nicholas Fuentes, who's back on the platform, who has openly praised Hitler, um, and is on there. There's folks like Andrew Tate, for example, the extreme misogynist, and that's kind of the environment that exists on the platform now. It's one where that kind of content, that kind of hate will be tolerated, and not only just tolerated, but boosted. I go to my For You page, for example, that algorithmically curated feed, and sometimes it's at the very top. It's quite nuts. I mean, I peruse Twitter a lot for my job, and yesterday, someone sent me a tweet that had gotten a lot of exposure. And it was a tweet basically justifying slavery. It was saying that slavery should come back, and it had 17,000 reposts or retweets. It was just, that is the kind of content we're seeing that is being normalized on Musk's X.
I mean, Donald Trump himself was of course banned from Twitter after the storming of the Capitol, which is one of many things that kind of sparked the supposed internal crisis that led Elon Musk to wish to buy it. Musk is now one of Trump's biggest cheerleaders. Musk is back on the platform theoretically, although doesn't really appear to use it. At what stage do we know did Elon Musk become such a huge Donald Trump fan? Because he's very much a fan now.
It was sort of a slow progression. He was no fan of Biden whatsoever and has been really critical of the Biden administration over the last 4 years. But he also was a little skeptical of Trump. I think he said fairly recently that he still felt Trump should ride off into the sunset and hand over the party to someone else. He initially was supportive of Ron DeSantis's presidential campaign, but I think over time he started to realize that Trump was the strongest contender for the Republican ticket. And they started meeting more regularly in March of this year. And I think actually found quite a kinship in the way that they operate. They share certain political views, particularly on immigration. Elon is very hardline about that, as is Trump. And they sort of began this symbiotic relationship where, Elon Musk really wants Trump to be posting on X. He thinks that he will be an asset to the platform. Trump, meanwhile, has been really frustrated with the Republican donor base and felt like they are not doing enough to support him. And Elon's given quite significantly to Trump and been willing to show up and campaign for him on on the trail. So they've had a very helpful relationship to each other so far.
Do you think Musk would be sorry, very British word, disturbed, bothered that that although he's offered Trump this huge support, as you know, as you were saying, even appearing on stage with them very enthusiastically, Musk is still not using Twitter as his platform of choice. Do you think he will mind that?
We use that word over here, by the way,
Oh,
but
good.
um, Trump has, to some extent, come back to the platform. It's quite interesting to watch that progression, actually, because one of the first things that Elon did when he came in and bought the company in late 2022 is try and find a way to get Trump back on the platform. And he framed it as one of principle and free speech, but actually internally he was talking about it as a source of engagement. He thought it would be great. People would drive a lot of people back to the platform, drive a lot of attention on his new ownership of the company. And it took months for Trump to actually do his first return tweet. It was that mugshot photo that he had when he was arrested, or not arrested, but indicted in Georgia. But since then, Trump has been pretty quiet until he actually did that Twitter space or that X space with Elon Musk, that interview, that live streamed interview. And he's been posting a lot more since then. There's been a lot of campaign stuff. There's been videos. He's still on True Social, and some of the most, like, I guess we'd call it erratic posting, or yelly kind of posting is on True Social. But he's using kind of both now, and navigating both. Obviously, I think Musk would probably like all of that to be on X, but there is some of a normalization of using X from the Trump campaign now.
And to what extent do we think that the algorithms that run X have changed? I know there's been some talk about that they're designed to boost specifically Elon Musk content, but the fact that Twitter appears to have X, sorry, I shouldn't dead name it. The fact that X appears to have trended so far to the right, is that a function of what Elon Musk is making his team do with the software, with the algorithms, or is that simply a function of the fact that the far right is no longer being censored?
I think there's a little bit of both. We saw last year when X open sourced its algorithm, there was a little bit of code in there that said author is Elon. So it was a boost for Elon's tweets specifically to give him a little bit of edge. And then after that was noticed and called out, it was removed from the code. That being said, I think, what Elon has done with X is make the algorithm prioritize accounts that are verified on the platform. So people who pay $8 a month to get the verified checkmark are getting a little boost. I believe you have to be verified to show up on the For You page. So that's a benefit for those folks. And the people who are likely to purchase the checkmark are often Elon fans, people who share his political beliefs, who share his ideology on free speech, and want to make a financial contribution to the platform. So the people who are opting into that algorithmic boost and choosing that for themselves are often people who share his political views and maybe are a little further to the right than who was verified on the platform previously.
So there's nothing stopping liberals from signing up and being verified in the same way and boosting their own engagement on the platform. You think they might have some success doing that?
I think maybe, but I think a lot of people who are more on the liberal end of the spectrum have a little bit of distaste for feeling like they're supporting, financially supporting Elon's X. And, a lot of those people have also shifted off the platform. I've noticed, there's like a very strong liberal left-leaning bubble when I log on to Threads. I'm not seeing any kind of like centrist or right-wing content there. And so I think a lot of those people have opted out of the platform or are still on X and are choosing not to pay for a check mark. And so their voices feel a little bit diminished.
That's particularly true in the UK, actually. In the UK, there's been a major exodus both to Threads and to Blue Sky among the sort of liberal media and liberal politics on the left, particularly. Look, in terms of whether it's been a success from Elon Musk's perspective, he posted about 6 months after the purchase, how do you make a small fortune in social media? Starts out with a large one. And we know that X is worth about 80% less than it was when he bought it. Does he think it's been a success? Was it about financial success? Was it about a political motive? Do you think he would think that what has happened is what he expected and wanted to happen?
I think he waffles on that. In the early days, he was saying, this is not about money. This is not about finances, but at the end of the day, he's a businessman with investors. He's taken in billions of dollars of investment. This was not just his own money. He's raised a lot of debt as well, to do this deal. And when we talk about debt, he has to pay $1 billion in interest a year to pay down that debt. So regardless of what he believes, like, this is still a financial transaction, and from that standpoint alone, like you said, there's been an incredible amount of wealth destruction. It was $44 billion when he bought it. You have an investor in Fidelity that has marked down their investment or the valuation of the company to $8 or $9 billion on any given day. So yeah, that is a pretty bad mark on him and his view. From an ideological perspective, I think it's a great purchase for him. It's become his megaphone more than ever. He's now the most followed account on the platform with more than 200 million followers. And he's able to push his message. And that message right now is to support Donald Trump and to get him elected to the White House.
To what extent is there evidence that he might have something of a drug problem?
But he's been very public about his drug use. I don't know that he has ever characterized it as an addiction, but he has spoken publicly about using ketamine and other drugs. Ketamine specifically, he said he's had a prescription for, and it has been used as an experimental therapeutic for depression. And so he's described that, saying it's something that he's sort of self-medicating with when he feels like he's in these dark places in his life. But I think it has been an area of concern both for leaders at his companies and for his family and friends and people who are close to him.
Yeah, he didn't speak to you for this book about him. He's very he's generally very cagey with people writing books about him, I understand. How did he respond to your request? Did he do so at all?
So he doesn't like us very much, but we tried multiple times to reach him. Towards the end of the process, we sent him and his representatives more than, I think, 518 questions, in a no surprises kind of format, but no response. The only thing we've gotten from him is a tweet or a post on X. Someone posted an image of the book, and he responded with 2 laughing emojis. So I guess that's in his endorsement of our work, I guess.
Maybe he just found it funny. Who knows? Like, is there are there any heroes in this story, or is this just a story of sort of tech dysfunction and sort of a political drift in the wrong direction? Are there heroes here?
One of the things that was frustrating to me about the way the deal was covered as it was unfolding is that I feel like the story was often portrayed as evil Elon versus the white knights at Twitter. And what we really wanted to tell in this story, or in this book, is the story of how Twitter was mismanaged and put into a place to be acquired by someone like Elon. And so we wanted to kind of burst that bubble a little bit and complicate the narrative of this just being a simple tale of good versus evil. I think that being said, there are a number of small moments throughout the book of bravery on behalf of certain employees who tried to stand up to Elon, who made efforts to protect the elections that were happening in the midst of the takeover. We were going through midterm elections here in the United States, and there were also presidential elections going on in Brazil. And there were employees who worked very hard to make sure that those conversations on the platform were protected. But I think that we really wanted to make sure that all of the characters that we focused on in the book felt robust and whole. And no one is a hero. I think everyone has their complications and their setbacks, and we wanted to tell a really full and complete story here.
Ryan, I'll give you the last word.
I think it's a human story, right? There's a lot of imperfections in folks, including Elon himself. I think a lot of people view him through this lens of saving humanity or electrifying cars or getting things into space and making humans multiplanetary. But at the same time, he is very human. He has a lot of flaws, and that can be kind of laid bare in this transaction. And the Twitter takeover has not been kind to him and his reputation. And I don't know. It's a very human story. He can contain multitudes. He can do these great things on one hand and get things into space and land rockets and stuff like that. But on the other hand, he can really destroy a social platform and destroy value. And I think that is the kind of moral of the story.
Okay, Conger and Ryan Mack, thank you very much indeed. And the book is Character Limit: How Elon Musk Destroyed Twitter.